And hello there. Welcome to Justice Served TV. Michael Bryant here.
Hi, Michael Bryant, Linda Kenny Bodden here, your pod partner. Nice to see
Hey,
you.
I thought you looked familiar.
Connecticut.
That's a lovely sweater you have on there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thanks for coming back from New York to Connecticut. You've been very involved with a trial here in New York
Yeah,
City.
nothing going on in this case. Simple, straightforward case, except in New York, where it's totally out of control. And we're
The
talking,
Daniel
of course,
Penny
about the
case.
Penny
Yes. What the heck is going on in that courtroom, Michael Bryant? And I have my New York bar admission, but New York statutes are a little bit different, and you see that this is some case. It has all the makings. It has jury consultants. It has a high profile defendant, high profile issue. It's all over the media over here in New York, and then in the courtroom, wow, bam, wow. All right. We talked about it initially that we thought that the jurors would have a verdict on Monday or Tuesday or be hung. And here we are on Friday of the week.
And yesterday afternoon, I started feeling hungish, the questions they were asking, because yesterday was about definitions of recklessness, definition of criminal negligence. So you're thinking, okay, they're waffling between the two. They had talked earlier about justification. What does that mean? So, we're trying to read these cryptic questions. But I still felt like it's like they're trying to convince one or two people of something, and they're not making any progress because they keep circling back with more of these, definition type questions, which to me are questions for somebody that doesn't get it. Maybe the big picture, they just don't get it. So today we learned that as to the top charge, anyway, they really don't get it.
Right, but you know what? Can I disagree with you a little bit there? Just a
Sure.
tad, not much. I think usually you have to have this kind of discussion and this kind of coming back twice on a hung. There has to be a split with at least 5 people. I think that 2 doesn't hold up. They just don't hold. But I think when you have and they come back, you have to have at least 5.
Okay. Let me throw this at you. If you were the one person, or if I was the one person, it would be plenty. Because you're suggesting you have one person and you get them in a headlock and you give them all this further information and you get them to bend in your direction. I think it depends on the one person. So I would disagree that it takes 5. Maybe 5 equals one tough person. I don't know. But you put an alpha person in there, and the more they get beat up and bullied, the harder and deeper they dig their heels in. So we don't know. We don't know if it's one person or 5. But obviously, here's something we do know.
Obviously, we end up the same place.
Yeah, but here's something we do know. No matter what, we know this. At least one person was voting to convict this man of manslaughter. That's undisputed, right? Has to be.
Right.
And maybe more. Which, of course, is what makes most people upset, because most people, and again, I've always said, if this weren't in a New York court, it either A, wouldn't be going to court, or it would have been done in about 20 minutes once it got to the jury. But we're in New York on this thing, where the impressions of those who ride the subway is an issue, and the how should I put this? I don't want to just say liberal nature, because that's too easy. But the feeling that the victim is quite often less cared for than the defendant. They feel like we need to step up and protect the victim, no matter what the victim's circumstances might have been that led to that victimhood.
Yeah, except that we had Joe Scott Morgan on the trial, and if I recall, when we had him on, he was talking about the nature of the video and the chokehold here. That everyone was kind of agreed. In fact, I was the odd person out. I said I thought it was either going to be hung or criminal negligence. And I think that if I recall Joe Scott Morgan, and you were saying that the defense has a really hard case here, that you thought that it was going to get convicted at that point. So remember that going back, the nature of that video is so gruesome when you get to the second 3 minutes. Okay.
Well, that's the key. It is the duration. That's the only thing that, in my mind, that tips the scale in any way. But then you also have to find recklessness in the way let's say you get past justification, then you've got to find recklessness for the top charge or criminal negligence for the lower charge.
Michael, your sound has gone out. Michael Bryant, your sound
has gone out.
Yes, your sound has gone out.
I can hear it perfectly well.
Well, we cannot hear you perfectly well. Okay, you're very light. There you go.
Somebody, now you can hear?
Now I can hear. Right.
Okay, well, somebody yell out other than LKB
Yeah.
if you can't hear me, because
Yeah.
I
No,
didn't
but the
notice any
problem
difference.
is that it becomes excessive. Look, we live in New York. We see a lot of people, coming on the subway screaming and all. They're all going down the street. If you grabbed everybody and chokehold them, that's what we have different people for. New York wouldn't exist. We all live in that subway, and it just. I felt that it was excessive. I don't know if I would indict him for manslaughter. I don't know if I would have convicted him for manslaughter, but I would have a hard time not necessarily, looking at the criminal negligence charge, that he was negligent, that he can save it. And I
Well,
think
there's
it's
an argument
hard.
that can you hear me? Can you hear me
Yes,
now?
now we can hear you.
There's
Yes.
an argument that Alvin Bragg, the DA, added this lower charge, the criminal negligence charge, so he could get a conviction of some kind, any kind, almost admitting that, hey, the top charge may be a tough one to get. And now we know, for those who haven't heard the latest procedural shenanigans, the top charge has been dismissed by the court. And I don't believe the words "with prejudice" were ever uttered, but I think by operation of law, it is with prejudice because of the nature and the timing of the dismissal.
Right.
So that means that's gone. That means that ain't coming back ever. Which, if you're on the defense, even if you believe you should never be sitting in that courtroom, still a pretty good sigh of relief that top charge is no longer in play. Because I've always felt, as reported in the New York Sun, that if there's going to be a compromised verdict, that 4-year top sentence for criminally negligent homicide is unlikely to be enforced against the first timer. I just don't see it.
Well, no, right. He would never go to jail with that. And I think and jurors are pretty savvy and pretty smart. But
yeah, I mean, they're not supposed to. They're not supposed to figure about that stuff, but sure, they do. They think
but I think the defense made, and you and I have spoken about this, and I've tweeted about this. I think the defense made 2 mistakes. If I were doing the defense, I would not do these 2 things. The first thing is, when Neely was dying and he peed his pants, right? He urinated in his pants. To suggest that was because he was having a psychotic break, I thought that was,
too much.
Too much. I mean, jurors watched the video. We all watched the video. You don't say that, okay? Just leave that out. And the second thing I thought they made a mistake in is that you have 4 black jurors in the jury. They know that sickle cell trait does not cause death. It is sickle cell disease that causes death. They know that. So when you bring somebody in to say, oh, he died of sickle cell disease, when the black jurors know that there's a huge difference. The NAACP has made an education campaign upon this in a long time. George Floyd, my husband mentioned it, but George Floyd had sickle cell trait. He didn't die of sickle cell disease because of the takedown. And a lot of times when you die, your cells sickle. I think those 2 things are a mistake, and then they piss people off, and then people harden in their positions.
Well, I don't know that I give people that much credit as to their knowledge of the sickle cell traits and what it does or doesn't cause and how it makes an impression on the cause of death. I really don't think they know that. I think they hear from a medical examiner who thinks one thing, then they hear from the defense examiner who thinks another, and they go with the one they like best. I just don't think they're making that.
Right, and that's a mistake of the prosecution. That's a mistake by the prosecution not to bring.
They should have got somebody else. Yes,
right. They should have brought somebody else who's. I mean, they live in a city filled with universities here, right? Medical schools. Why not bring somebody else? I mean, it's a sloppy prosecution too. I'm not saying that that it was just a sloppy defense. I'm saying it was a sloppy prosecution. I'm saying that both these things matter. I mean, you want to get to the truth. You want to get to justice in the courtroom, and you want to know what's real and what's not. And you really should be, thinking about that before you put your case in before the jury, both sides.
This case reminds me in so many weird ways of YSL. And by the way, if you folks didn't see, we did the Max Shart Shaq Kokomo, and it's KOKUMO interview yesterday, and that's on it's on the library somewhere. Take a look at that if you haven't had a chance. But we know that Fonnie Willis was dating Nathan Wade. I'm starting to think she should maybe get connected with Alvin Bragg, because I think they seem to think very much the same. These two cases have parallels in terms of what I would perceive as overcharging and an attempt to make maybe a political message more important than the actual crimes being pursued. So,
well, no, but he's Jordan Neely was a human being, and
I understand
just say
that
he's a human being, and just to say, let's throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, I think that you let the jury decide. There wasn't a murder charge. That's good. There wasn't like a felony. You know, some prosecutors like Fonnie Willis would have brought a felony murder charge. He would have said,
Yeah,
well,
well, yeah, because it was in the
process of an
process of an assault or
aggravated an
yes,
assault, right? And
yeah,
therefore it was a felony murder. And you know that. And that would have been ridiculous. Alvin Bragg has a lot of respect, but I think that these, you know, this case, you know, again, if you try the case wrong, and also remember, there's a big issue here of jury selection. But before we do that, we should indicate, because there is a question about why the judge in New York had to dismiss that first charge, the manslaughter, and why he did it, and for what reason. Because all of us, even lawyers, are sitting here and saying, "Huh?"
I mean, if I'm the defense, I am fuming. You know, yes, there is that side benefit that, okay, the top charge is gone, so now I'm looking at a 4-year max, which we don't think is going to be imposed, even if there is a verdict, guilty verdict. But I'm pissed off because the judge is basically telling this jury, get back in there now, focus your efforts on this other. You can't figure out the top charge. Well, go back in there, start over again, and see what you can do with the second charge, which is far more nebulous in the way you think about the facts in this case. It's far more squishy. I just think it's not fair. What would have been fair would have been for the judge to tell them to continue their deliberations until they came to some conclusion, and they either have a hung jury or they have a verdict on everything. That would have been appropriate.
That's going to be one of the issues for appeal. Now, New York is different. Now, New Jersey has lesser includeds, but they don't have, many states don't have this criminally negligent homicide, which I love if you don't have it. I mean, when we tried the Jason Williams case, which we're going to talk about the jury consultant in that, we don't have that in New Jersey. So you don't have to worry about whether it's a lesser included or not. We also have one whole code. It's called, NJSA 2C. All right. And therefore, it's one whole criminal code. But New York has all these different criminal codes. And the criminal negligence is not apparently a lesser included of the manslaughter, which kind of like, remember Karen Reed? It kind of like has how it prevails on Karen Reed, right? Did the jury find her not guilty of the murder, the manslaughter at the top charge, and then they go to the second areas, right? The other charges.
Well, and Melissa makes a good point here, Melissa Hamilton. There is this perception that the jury was told at some point in the process, okay, as you're going through the verdict form, don't even look at the second charge until you've resolved the first one. That's not true. They don't have to do that. They weren't advised to do that. They weren't informed to do that, because as you suggest, that would be typical in a lesser charges analysis, right? Where you're going through them and you're defaulting to the one below. These are standalone charges. They could have gone in and just said, we're going to work for 4 days on number 2.
And find him guilty there or not guilty there. Right.
That's right.
And that's what's a mess.
And there is no direction from the court to tell them you can work on either one. You can work on the top charge first, you can second, or vice versa. So they're in there somewhat blind, using common sense, saying, hey, let's start at the top. Let's start there. And that's where we'll put all of our energy. But they had no obligation to do that, because this is not a lesser included. It's an independent standalone charge.
The whole thing is a mess. It's created an appellate error issue. The defense asked for a mistrial when the jury came back this morning. On the first time, they said they were hung, which means they couldn't reach a verdict. And then they asked for it again on the second time the jury said they were hung, couldn't reach a verdict. And there's things that happened in between. We should fill our viewers in what happened in between. Michael, you've been on this case. Give us
which part? In between which part?
The first time they came back today, the jury said we're hung, and the judge said what to them? And then they
gave him the Allen charge, the dynamite
and which
charge.
Is what?
It basically says, we appreciate your work, but get your ass back in there and work harder on it and come to some resolution, because if you don't, I have to declare a mistrial. It means there's going to be a whole new jury to retry this case. And we knew, because I'd done a little research ahead of time with Judge Wiley. He doesn't like giving the Allen charge, but he is not afraid to give it multiple times. There are a lot of judges, like the judge in the Karen Reed case, where it's like, I give it once and then I immediately jump to mistrial.
Without telling everybody.
Judge Wiley gave it twice already as to the top charge before he did, very differently than a mistrial. He excised it with a dismissal. Really, it was the same result if you're looking at just the jury's work, but totally different result, because if he had declared a mistrial as to the first count, they could be retrying Daniel Penny on that at some point. But now, dismissing it as a matter of law, it can't be retry. That one's now done. So
thank you, Melissa, for the super sticker. We really appreciate that. And your question was perfectly appropriate. Going off your question, one of the things that was interesting, and Madeira Caregiver said this is kind of unbiased or insane, but one of the things I thought was interesting is the prosecution then had to decide whether they were going to ask for the count to be dismissed. Michael, what was that all about? And when did that occur in relation to these two hung notices from the jury? And did the jury ask for any instructions of any other charge?
Well, in terms of how the day unfolded, that was just before lunch when we got to this sticking point, and I think it was decided over lunch, is my best guess, by the prosecution. They had to put their heads together and decide what was the worst medicine to take. Would it be the mistrial, or would it be just? And I think they apparently decided we'll just take that one off the board. We'll take the top charge, manslaughter, second degree, off the board. Let this jury refocus themselves. Surely we have enough evidence that's been presented to get to a criminally negligent homicide conviction. That's what it sounds like happened. But in the process, the jury said, well, we need to know what a reasonable person is. What's a reasonable person?
And when did that come? When did that come? That was after
the first charge disappeared.
After the first charge disappeared.
So then they knew where they were going to be focusing their efforts at that point.
I am still so absolutely confused about what transpired. And somebody pointed out, who was it that said, yes, Melissa pointed out that with that, she read this on Twitter, but without cameras in the courtroom, this is really hard. And I agree, this is really hard, even though we have, great people, great reporters in the courtroom who are covering this, you being one of them.
You don't often see it in a case like this, so many in the jury deliberation process, there have been four questions. That doesn't count the Allen charge hung jury issue 1, Allen charge hung jury 2. I mean, those are 6 pretty key events, not counting as well. We want to see this video, and then we want to see this video. I mean, there have been almost 10 of those interactions during deliberations, and that's unusual to say the least. And, for those who might be criticizing this prosecution, like me, that tells you that the case was foggy when presented to this jury, because it's not clean enough for them to figure out exactly what they're supposed to be doing and how to get to a result. And if this were anywhere but New York, we wouldn't have this conversation. It would be, they came to a verdict in 32 minutes. Can you believe that? And it was an acquittal.
I kind of like the fact that the jury is taking
I'm fine with that if they come to the right conclusion. What do you think about, there are so many people that are concerned. Some would say that even bringing the case against Daniel Penny, it has a chilling effect on anybody who is in his position down the road in a subway. And I have to tell you, when I was on the subway, I saw a sign that said, "No Chanel allowed." So I'm not sure if you're going to be going on there anytime soon. But I think there are people that are concerned that somebody will be afraid to step up. They're just going to be afraid to step up, even if he is acquitted on all charges, because they're going to say, look at this guy's life. Now, sure, he's got $3.6 million that came to him in the GoFundMe world. That's why he has this. There are 9 people that go in and out of the courtroom with him each time. 9, 3 bodyguards, 3 attorneys, support people. His mom's there.
But there's a lot of feeling, and I've talked to you about it, about people around that, he went too far. It's one thing to help out, but then he went too far. I mean, people are saying to him at 3 minutes, let go. You're killing him.
He's tapping out.
You're killing him.
He's tapping out. Well, there were more people concerned for their safety than saying I don't know that anybody used that phrase, you're killing him.
I think somebody did. Someone said you're killing him. There was one person that said that you were killing him.
I didn't hear that on the video. Should we run the video? I have the video. But my point is, unless you're in his shoes, in that circumstance, it is so easy to sit back and say, well, he just held that hold too long. He should have known he was going to kill the guy. No, you've never been in that position. And I've luckily never been in that position. And if I were in his position, I'd like to think that I have the balls to step up and grab this guy and control him to the degree that was appropriate. I have no idea. I might snap his neck. I don't know. I might snap his neck just the adrenaline flow from the circumstances. Obviously not intentionally,
I didn't know
Not
you had that in
intentionally.
you. Yeah, but
Well,
you know
I
what?
don't
You
know.
can be a savior. You know, but people also get upset. There's a whole difference of opinion, and I know that this has now become a race thing, right? You know, unfortunately, it's become an issue of race, and we saw that today outside the courtroom and all. And you know, someone said yesterday on our stream that yeah, it is an issue of race because Neely was described by Penny as a crackhead, and crack equals somebody who's black.
Yeah,
You
we had
know,
that. That was
and
news to me. I'm just a dumb white guy. That's news to me. I
well,
didn't know that there
but
was.
how did you not know that? Because the whole
I,
thing about you know how
I
did
mean,
you the
crack
whole
is
thing about
crack. I don't
no,
know. I
but
figure.
the whole thing about sentencing for the past like 40 years has been that crack cocaine is sentenced different than regular powder cocaine because white
Because it's more
people,
expensive
yeah,
and less
white
expensive.
right, and white people use you know regular cocaine, and black people use crack cocaine because it's cheaper. So, and that was the whole thing that therefore it became that. You know that discrepancy between races and classes, and so there was a whole thing. And finally, you know, the sentencing commission said, "Yes, you're absolutely right. It is."
In
So,
this case, I don't see that. I don't see race as an issue in this case, and I think the only way it raised its head was in the charging, the fact that it became this outcry. Look, and here's another white guy killing a black guy, you know. But I don't see that in the presentation of the case, except the prosecution tried to sprinkle that in the closing. But I just don't get that feeling that people are looking at it as a black and white issue. I think they're looking at it as a right and wrong issue versus you know, justification for protecting yourself or others. I just don't think. I think the race thing's been blown out of proportion, except in the urging of Mr. Bragg to bring this case in the first place. It's
well,
been
but I
used.
disagree with you because today outside the courtroom there was a gentleman who is somebody who's very active in making sure that justice is served, and
Hey, wait, he doesn't. He's not affiliated.
he was
He's
saying that indeed the jury consultants made sure that they put somebody in, and this is where politics now enters all of the cases. And I say that not to disparage anyone on either side. I say that when you pick a jury now, don't you have to be aware of their political views? Because aren't some people more politically saying that something wouldn't be racist, something, and other
no
people say
doubt.
it would be racist, it is racist. Some people say science is bullshit, other people say science is not bullshit. I mean, we're having that trauma in this country right now, and I think it's affecting jurors also.
So let's talk about that gentleman who was basically blasting the jury consultant that they brought into this case. What's her name again? I think you've used her or know her.
Joellen Demetrius, she was my jury consultant in the Jason Williams case, our jury consultant, I should say, in our team's consultant in the Jason Williams case. She also was, she's done a lot of cases.
She
She
did
was a jury.
OJ. She did Rittenhouse. What I thought it was interesting was the statement made by this gentleman, and it was sort of a pseudo press conference, I guess. It was before the parties had left, and the press was looking for something. So he was using her work and besmirching her, saying that she's specifically hired in cases where white men have killed black men, so that she comes in to massage a jury selection to favor a white guy who has killed a black guy. Okay, that's his proposition. But then he says, he gives the example of the Rittenhouse case. And I'm like, dude, I don't remember any black people killed in the Rittenhouse case. So what are you talking about? So,
And then Jason Williams, my client, was black and the person killed was white. And OJ
yeah.
Simpson, the client
So
was black and the
O.J.
person killed
Simpson's
was
the other one.
white.
So, I mean, that you know, they just
Yeah. But
didn't
look, jury
support his
consultants were
proposition.
jury consultants. They're going to say, who do you think is more likely to you know stand in that jury room and espouse for your client? That's what you know. Before you get there, let's talk about what you do before you get there. If Joe Ellen is involved, all right, there was probably a telephone poll to try to find out what the viewpoints around were that in the area that the jury is going to be pulled from. There was, I'll guarantee you, for the most part, not just a focus group, but there probably was a mock trial in a location that is similar to wherever the jury pulling is New York. There would have been background polls from LexisNexis or any other investigative type of And I don't mean like a private investigator. I mean like public information, any public information that you can pull about possible jurors, although the jurors here's names were not disclosed. I don't know whether they were disclosed to the parties. So she will do her job really well. As a matter of fact, she trained the jury consultant who I use, Richard Gabriel, in most of my cases. And we're going to try to get Richard on Monday. He doesn't know it yet. I haven't put a call out to him. But he owes me because I'm doing a panel with him in New York next in January next year. I'm like, gosh,
Yeah,
it's
next year.
1 month, you know.
Hey, you mentioned the jury. We've been talking about the jury. I want to show you folks something that I think is very interesting because we know there are two sketch artists in the courtroom, and this is a sketch of the jury. Okay, now I found it interesting having sat there not far from them, and I have where's my notepad here? I have my detailed notes about who's where and what details I have
Is it
about
a Justice Serve notepad?
Well, of course it is. It's artificial. I mean, it's official. So I'm looking at. I'm going. Those are pretty good pictures. I could pick those people out of this drawing based on having seen them. Now you're not going to be able to identify them just on that. But I was just amazed at how close to reality this drawing was without really giving it away. And the mask count. See, you can see the second person from the left on the bottom row has a mask on. The mask count is 2. There's 2 people that just wear a mask every day. They have worn a mask every day. And so she's included that. I say she because I can't remember which of the 2 artists did this one. But interesting. And the other thing we haven't talked much about is, in spite of all the deliberations talk, the alts are involved in this deliberation, the alternates. Some places do it very differently. They release them, but keep them as sterile as they can in case they're needed to enter the mix. But in this case, everybody's deliberating because that's what they're doing. So they've got a hardy bunch so far. Nobody has caved in. That's somewhat surprising, to be honest. Anyway, I just thought that was curious. The drawing there.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We have 2 great sketch artists left in this country, and they're both here in New York, Christine Cornell and Jane Rosenberg, and they've both been in that courtroom. I think we've shown some of their sketches. Hopefully, maybe one day we can get them on because I think they are the most interesting of people to be able to capture what's going on in that courtroom when we don't have cameras, which is another thing.
New York is the gold mine for them, because there aren't really any cameras here, or there should be. And remember, we've said it many times, not that they're illegal, just that there's almost this brotherhood rule that says we ain't going to say it's yes to have cameras. So, but it's a lost art, because there are cameras so many places.
Yeah, and in a way, it's good because it keeps the art going of sketch artists, and so that's the only reason you have it. Because like a lot of times you'll see sketch artists from, like I see them from California and all, and they come in. I'm looking at like, oh, that's a sketch.
That is sketch.
That's not a sketch.
Since we're talking about it, let me share another one here. What is that one? Yeah, it's just kind of a generic courtroom scene. This is obviously Defendant Penny. Yeah, but just the detail they use is very interesting, and I've mentioned before how they use the binoculars, which I think is pretty cool. Hey, I got an idea. I just had this idea. Let's see how this works. I'm going to do a sketch of the sketch artists, and then maybe chat with them, talk to them about my sketch of them. Okay. So
yes, the judge dismissed the manslaughter charge. Now we talked about that to start the program. Did the judge have to dismiss the manslaughter charge to get to the second count? At first he said, I'm not sure, if I recall, right? That's what's being reported anyhow. And then he told the prosecution yes, and then he gave it to the prosecution to decide whether they were going to dismiss it, and they said they're dismissing it, therefore it has to be dismissed with prejudice. You're in the middle of a trial. You can't dismiss it without prejudice, but the jury's already had the case. And then they're going to come back Monday, and he's going to tell them to, I don't know what he's going to tell them. I guess he's going to tell them just to concentrate on the next charge without telling them the first charge has been dismissed. They're going to wonder, what have I been sitting here since before Thanksgiving?
I know, right? And that would anger them, I would think. But yeah, he's going to have to give them, he's going to have to explain something. I don't know how he's going to do it, but they've come back to him hung twice on that top charge. If he then says, why don't you work on the second charge? They may just assume that it's been handled.
Right. They may assume it's been dismissed, and then for the second charge, it could go either way. They're going to either assume it's been dismissed, and the second they're going to, come back with the guilty on the second charges. That's where they were heading for a compromise, or they're going to say, wait a second, if that's gone, I'm gone too. I'm going home. Christmas is coming. Kind of like
Yeah, well,
winter is coming. Game of
this is
Thrones.
that's right. This is Friday, so this was, they expected Friday verdict, and it just kind of got derailed. I was really kind of surprised, and they quit early at 4:00, a little after 4. They quit
I think
early.
that's because the judge wanted them to come back Monday, and they had to figure out what they were going to do, what they were going to say. But you know what? This is a mess. This is just a mess. I think. I mean, there's no reason. Both sides should have tried the case better. This whole idea of not telling the jury what to do, this whole idea of not knowing what you're going to do if the jury was hung on count one. I mean, isn't that something that somebody should have planned for and thought about, Michael Bryant?
I guess they just assumed that the jury would sort it out themselves and come back with, if it was going to be a not guilty on one and a guilty on the other, then everybody's happy, or not guilty on both. They just didn't figure out that, oh yeah, they could be hung on one of the counts. Never thought of that.
Yeah, so. and tell us that they're hung on one of the, and maybe they didn't expect that note, like, a Phantom of the Opera, another note. They didn't expect that, right?
Yeah. So
and we talked about it. We talked about it actually with YSL. Remember, we talked about it that if a jury has a verdict on one, they can come out and tell the judge they have a verdict on one, or they can't figure out another one.
And I think we saw it in Reed, and now we're seeing it again. It's a mistake of the court to assume too much. They assume too much that the jury will just figure that out, that to them it should be common sense. And it's clearly not common sense. You should be telling them you have 2 counts in front of you. You have 3 counts in front of you. You have 4, whatever it may be. You can evaluate, deliberate on any of them you want, but you can tell us if you've come to a conclusion unanimously on any of them.
Right. Or if you can't come to a conclusion.
Or if you can't, on any of them. But don't feel like you have to take them in order, as they apparently are here.
Yeah, and there's one other little wrinkle. The defense attorney said to the judge just before they left, we believe that one of the jurors is talking to the press.
that little thing.
Oh, it's a little tidbit. Now, I don't know if that's true, but the judge said, so what? You go out. I'm not going to.
If you want to investigate it, knock yourself out.
Knock yourself out. I'm not bringing.
Outrageous.
I'm not going to bring the jurors in and question them right now. I'm not going to do it. So let them go home for the weekend. You go investigate it.
We'll see if he changes his tune Monday. If Judge Wiley, consults somebody, I think it's error for him not to at least ask a simple question. Has anybody here been talking to the press? That's it. That's all you'd have to do.
Well,
either it's a yes or it's a no.
Welcome to New York. Yesterday, 2 days ago, we had a shooting here, a homicide, a block from my office. We have the Penny case that people have very rigid positions on here in the city. I just say, welcome to New York.
Speaking of that, I put up a poll, and I try to make these as neutral as I can, but I'm sure some of my biases bleed in.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Yes.
Because you and I disagree on a lot of things.
I know. Should the Penny judge have dismissed the manslaughter charge? Okay, that sounds pretty innocuous, right? No, it makes it more likely the jury will convict on the criminal negligence. Or yes, the jury should be focused on the second charge. That's how I phrased those 2 options.
I think that phraseology may lead people to
maybe a problem. I didn't want to just say yes or no, which is obviously clear, yes or no. But I put some explanatory language in there. So go to our community tab and weigh in on that if you'd like.
So let me just say one thing, because I think Madeira Beach caregiver brings up a point. Since the prosecution asked the judge to dismiss and the judge dismissed, that is with prejudice now, and it cannot be retried. He cannot be retried Penny for manslaughter. That's gone. Goodbye. So long. The poll, by the way, is at our YouTube page and Justice Serve TV YouTube page, and it says community. And if you go to the community tab, underneath the community tab is the poll that you can vote in Madeira Beach caregiver. Yeah. But yeah, so that's what happens. Is that's how the judge can dismiss it. It's not like it just goes out there and it can be retried. It could be retried if there was a hung jury.
Exactly. And a mistrial as a result on that one count. And there was a lot of back and forth between the parties and the judge before he made that decision. He didn't do it in a vacuum, which would have maybe been worse, but he consulted and, everybody made their position clear, and he decided to do what he did.
I'm not sure how much worse this could be in terms of appellate issues. I'm just not sure.
This is a straightforward case. You don't see many cases this straightforward. And I haven't done the number crunching recently. I think they're pushing mid 20 hours. How many was YSL? How many hours? You know,
Yeah, right, right.
and
About the
compare
same.
those two cases in
Right.
terms of length of time, complexity, the number of parties. I mean, this should be an easy case for anybody. So you got to ask yourself, why isn't it? Why isn't it easy for the jury to come to a decision?
Yeah, but what's interesting to me, it seems to me the jury had has decided that the chokehold killed Neely, and what they were deciding whether or not that was justified. That seems to me they went past the cause of death. They ended up with, they remember they started with cause of death questions. They concluded that, because if they concluded that that didn't cause his death, case is over, right? So once they decided that, they had to go to the question of whether there was justification, or whether Penny's actions were reckless. And now they're going to go to whether or not they're negligent. So I think we're past that.
That is a very logical approach. So the question is whether the jury is that logical. I'm not so sure that they have just said justification is out the window. I really don't know that they've been that smart, really, to be able to do that. They may still be factoring that in to the second charge, like they certainly factored it in to the first charge. And there may be some people that just thought he was justified, therefore I can't vote for the top charge. And those people may say the same thing for the second charge.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
You and I said when we started this case that the likely results were either a conviction on the negligent count or a hung jury.
Now
That's
we're
what
right. Well, there still could be an acquittal, technically.
There still could be an acquittal, technically. We did have a hung jury on the manslaughter. I mean, so we're right. At least we're right there.
Well, let's use some logic on this. If there were certainly people who voted for guilty on the manslaughter charge, is there any chance in hell they aren't going to vote guilty on the criminally negligent homicide charge?
No, because they thought that his conduct went beyond negligence.
But
that it was
means
reckless.
Unless you convince some acquittal type people to compromise, perhaps change their opinion, perhaps you're going to have a hung jury on the criminal negligence charge as well.
Yeah, because what happens now is there's really no compromise, right?
No,
because before the compromise was, okay, we can't do manslaughter. We're not doing not guilty. Why don't we look at negligence, see if we all can all agree at that? Now that's gone. So that's why I have no words as to what just happened.
Yeah, they should have brought this case, if it was going to be brought, with just the criminal negligence or not.
To start,
period.
right?
That's it.
Right.
Okay. Well, they didn't. So
well, you and I aren't in charge. Our viewers are not in charge, unfortunately.
True.
So,
well, before we move on, because we do want to update the United Healthcare case, right? We want to chat about that for a minute.
Right.
Before we do that, let's look at the civil case, because as some may have heard, there was a civil case filed just yesterday. What's today? Wednesday. On behalf of the Jordan Neely family. And just before this trial began, Dante Mills made a statement talking about, his client in the context of the criminal case. So we knew a civil case was coming, right? I ran into him yesterday at the elevators. I was heading out, introduced myself, asked if he'd like to come on, and still working on that. But I asked him very simply, I said, why now? Why file this thing now? Jury's in the middle of deliberations. And he said, well, we haven't seen anything that would change our mind about whether there's a case or not. And I said, well, what could you have possibly seen in this trial that would change your mind about filing a civil case? Because we know very different standards of proof. So, it was kind of a rhetorical question. I was basically calling on him, saying, dude, we know it had nothing to do with you watching what happened in the trial. There was no surprises there for you. So I don't know. I think there's some sort of publicity reason to file now.
Well, also now that the case is over, they can get access to the evidence when the case is over.
When it's over, in a few days. After a verdict, that would have been perfectly understandable.
Well, except that I probably would have done it at the very end anyhow. That way you can file your notices to preserve and hold on to all the evidence, or to get access to it and transfer it if it's not guilty or if it's guilty. The interesting thing is going to be, is there any of that evidence in there that would belong to Penny? I don't think so. I think most of it would have belonged to Neely, right? Neely's clothes and all. So that's why you want to probably do it right now.
Yeah, the video evidence, clearly you're going to want that. So let's just take a quick look. It's not to be honest, it's a very rudimentary, kind of simple looking complaint, and perhaps it should be. But let's take a look at a couple of the pages, because I have a test for you, a pop quiz for you.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Oh,
So
boy.
look at it. This is first cause of action, right?
I can't
And
read it, but that's
you can't
okay.
read it. Yeah,
No.
trust me. And I'm trying to enlarge it here. I don't know that I can, to be honest with you.
Can you take us off the screen?
Hey, we
And
disappeared.
no, the charge disappeared. There you go.
See, I don't see it coming back anytime soon. Hmm. Okay, so let me get rid of this page. I wanted to ask you a question about the one.
Is it a federal case? Federal
No,
civil
it
civil
is
rights?
not. It is not. But interestingly, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's a Supreme Court, state of New York, but it's a verified complaint. You want to tell folks why that's important in a state case to have a
Yeah,
verified complaint?
yeah. In state courts, not all state courts, but in New York State, to attest to the facts, when you're talking about facts, you have to have somebody who lawyers just can't do it. You have to have somebody who reviews it and says they know the facts they're in are true. Sometimes a lawyer will do some facts, but usually it's a family member, especially when it comes to damages. What the person's name was, that he's related to us, that we have standing to bring this, that he suffered, that we have expenses to pay, we had the funeral expenses, that type of thing, and they have to attest to all those facts being true.
So when you in a lot of complaints, especially at the state level, you'll hear this phrase many times: on information and belief.
Right.
That's not a verified complaint. A verified
That's
complaint,
not
you're
a
basically
verified
saying it
right.
under oath. So
Right.
you got to be careful because you can get yourself in trouble. Your case could be dismissed. It could be chopped up if they find that any of the things you verified are untrue.
Right.
So this is verified. So I found that interesting.
Yeah,
Okay, so the first cause
New
of
Jersey
action,
does not have a verified complaints. New York does. The federal courts,
California does. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes your federal courts, depending on the nature of the
federal.
claim, may have a verified complaint.
Yep.
Right.
Yep, federal, it's much more common. In fact, I think in some districts it's required. Okay, so this is a follow-up to my first question, and you can't see this either, but see, I've highlighted a couple of words here. This first cause of action doesn't have anything in the, see where it says here, second cause of action, assault?
I can't read a gosh darn thing, and I'm sure
Trust me, that's what it says.
Oh, so that's what we need you to read for us.
It says assault, and up above I've highlighted here, the first one didn't say, it said first cause of action, and then it said nothing. Didn't say the basis for it. Normally you would have the basis, breach of contract, whatever. It said nothing, but if you read into it, it says here, based on the negligence of Mr. Penny. And why is that important in a civil case?
Well, if you're negligent, there is insurance coverage.
Oh, okay? That.
If you're and including your homeowners or anything. If it's interesting. Recklessness can also have insurance coverage, except sometimes a policy will say if the recklessness equals criminal conduct, the insurance coverage does not cover. So quite frankly, by not having the recklessness judged in the criminal case, the civil case stands on a much better shall we say, 4 tires to try to get the insurance carrier and to defend
and sometimes that's what you
Penny
do
and possibly pay.
And this is what happens. I mean, if this happens, it's this, it's his homeowner's insurance or whoever they're going to tender it to get defense as well, because attorneys cost money, and so the insurance company will cover your attorney's fees if they agree to cover you, and they usually do it on a reservation of rights. And that just means we reserve the right to kick you to the curb if we decide during the course of this thing that you intentionally did whatever it was that you did, because they do not cover intentional acts generally.
So as I sip my Dunkin' Donuts.
So they would say, we'll do that on a reservation of rights, and good luck. So here we have the second cause of action is
before
assault.
you get to that, all right, this is just for you because you know this. And you mentioned it. There was a GoFundMe page that allowed Mr. Penny to be funded as if he were one of my clients. So usually my clients have millions of dollars to put towards consultants, to put towards experts, to have the high-powered lawyers, et cetera, et cetera. What happens to the money at GoFundMe page? Is Dante Mills able to say, as this case goes along, hey, judge, can you attach that and don't send it to anybody?
That's a very good question.
Stumped.
Yeah, well, assuming the GoFundMe was set up properly, and I'm assuming it was set up to go to a third-party fund of some sort, not to his personal bank account, I'm assuming, then there may be some shells that keep them from getting to it as an asset. It may be not truly his asset, you know what I mean? And if it's not truly his
Well, it's gonna be
asset, then
interesting,
it
won't
could
it?
be protected.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to point out one more page that nobody can read because it's too damn small. And I will. My own homework is going to be figure out how to zoom this damn thing in. That's what I want to do. So in the third charge you see is where you don't see is battery. So you have negligence, assault, you have battery. Battery and assault and battery make perfect sense. And the negligence has only one reason, and that's to draw insurance coverage. So, this is routine case. The timing on the filing, I think, is bizarre. A little bit of maybe showmanship, perhaps. But he's hoping now. Manslaughter's out. So now he's hoping for a criminally negligent homicide conviction because then, basically you walk that across the court hallway and you file it with your civil case, and you say, let's pick a dollar sign. Let's pick a number. How much?
Right.
We'll see. So I'll be back there Monday. We'll be back on Monday and see if they can sort this mess out.
Yeah, and and Monday night we'll probably go 7 o'clock. We'll probably do a 7 to 7:55 or 7 to 8 show on Monday night, just so you know, because Michael does have to travel back from New York, and last night he just made it.
A close one, baby. Yeah, well,
it was a close.
Well, I really felt like we were going to have a verdict by midday. Little did I know it was going to be quite the mess that began yesterday and truly ended today. Before we wrap up, do you want to take a quick give an update on the United Healthcare?
Yes, United Healthcare. Let me just tell you that I could not
give
post
us the backstory real quick.
Before we get the backstory, as you know, 2 days ago at 6:44 in the morning, about a block from my office on 55th between right in Midtown, between 6th and 7th, just 6 blocks from where the Christmas tree was about to be lit in Rockefeller Center, a man was gunned down who was CEO of one of the divisions of United Healthcare. The division that really, denied and didn't deny claims and made money through Medicare and all. It increased, and this is one, I'm mentioning this because this is possibly one of the motives here. He was, his name was Michael Test.
I'm sorry, I drifted off for a second there. What was that? What was that?
Never mind. All right. Anyhow, he was the victim. All right. The shooter executed him. 2 bullets.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Brian Thompson. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry.
It was a test. You can go back to sleep. It's okay.
Okay. This is now. That's a microcosm of my entire life in school. There it was, right there. Okay.
Mr. Brian. Yeah. All right. So
I agree, Professor.
It clearly was a hit, whether he's a professional or not. He's probably not a professional, but he was, what calls as a professional? Somebody who's hired? He clearly was hired, in my opinion. And 2 bullets, one in the leg, one in the back, and one that actually missed. A gun that was bought in Connecticut. The shooter had come to New York City about 10 days before, stayed in a hostel, left for a day, probably go to Connecticut to buy the gun, which was an old from a Connecticut shop, and it was a gun that was used by the British services some years ago because it had a suppressor that's attached to it, or silencer, as they say in the movies.
Like a James Bond gun.
Kind of like a James Bond gun, right? Yeah. And he's very casual, cool, calm, collected, walked away. But apparently he made some mistakes. He went and got a bottle of water at Starbucks, and they have the water bottle. The question is, does it have fingerprints? He dropped the burner phone, apparently, in the alleyway, which goes from 55th Street to 56th Street as he was casually walking away. Whether he dropped it purposely or not, I don't know. And he also had a candy wrapper coming down 55th Street that they were able to find. All because why? We're on camera everywhere.
We're speaking of on camera, and I think it's important that we share this just because it's he's a wanted man. So anything we can do to kind of help that. There is a couple of different pictures. This one probably is the best. As you can see, his smile there. The backstory on the smile, right? Flirting with the attendant.
Tell us.
Well, he stayed at a hostel. Yeah, he stayed at a hostel.
Man. He was flirting with the female attendant. Well,
he's not the first man to be undone by that. But so this is a pretty good picture of him. There was also another picture, and that all the facial recognition gadgetry that we've got. It's not an if, it's a when we get this dude. I mean, it's
the if is why did he do it? Is it?
Was he hired, or was it his personal motive? He seems like he's pretty young, so it makes me more you know, thinking that it's he was doing it on the payroll for somebody. Here's the second picture is the one here on the
Yeah,
right.
and he also
Here's
didn't
the difference.
execute. He also didn't execute. You know, he was just on task. He didn't execute the witnesses. He didn't go up and did the kill shot to the head, right? That seems, well, there he is again. Doesn't he look a
Yeah,
little
this
bit like Ted Bundy?
well, I guess Ted Bundy was an attractive guy, right? So here's the difference between these two
Yeah.
pictures. The one on the right was, I believe, that might have been either just later in the conversation he was having with this hostile receptionist, I guess. The one on the left looks like he's hoping
Hostile, not hostile.
not hostile, hostile, like a youth hostel.
Right.
But the one on the left looks like a guy who thinks he's getting laid, and then the one on the right looks like maybe he got shut down and it's not going to happen. But those were both pictures that the cops are going to use to bust this guy. And you know they're going to be checking to the genealogical sites. You know, if they got DNA off the water bottle or anything else, you know, they can use those tools to get this guy. So. And you know the fact they said he's now left New York, big deal. Yeah, big deal.
They said he left New York on a bus from 178th Street. So I mean, they must know the boss.
How many they got? They know how many buses. They know what time. They know where they were going. Yeah. But if you happen to be able to, you know, help find this guy, you might as well try and, you know, make a couple of bucks. They are still issuing this reward up to 10 grand.
Oh, this is like, but this is the most ridiculous reward. Okay, $10,000. How about $100,000? How about 200? Why does United Healthcare come out with a $500,000 reward? This is one of the people that was executed. Unless they think that on the bullet casings, but that could have been a way to either was personal or it was a way to change suspicion, because it could be a number of things. It could be supposedly he has a wife that he's been living apart from. Is it romantic basis? Is it based on the denial of a health care that somebody really family member died, right, because they wouldn't give health care? Or he was about to testify before U.S. Congress on the allegations of insider trading, and monopoly and all. And somebody said, hey, you're not going to die me on, send me to jail. So, you know, I mean, you have so many motives here. So I guess once you find the killer, we'll know the motive, right?
And that's, you know, that's the most fascinating part of the story. Everybody has their guess that it's either a disgruntled healthcare insurance issue, or it's hired by somebody who had a healthcare insurance issue. So who doesn't? Right. I mean, everybody hates their insurance company. Everybody.
Right.
So
right.
Probably killing the president is not the way to handle your concerns, but somebody decided.
But he knew he was going down the street. I mean, he's on his cell phone. He's getting a call. He's talking to somebody, and then he walks to where he is for 5 minutes before, right, or 10 minutes before. Was it 5 or 10 minutes? 5 minutes before, and then the victim comes down the street. He has to know which door he's going in. He has to know which hotel he's going to. He has to know that he's not in a bulletproof vest because he shoots him in a body mass, right? He's not just goes to the head. He doesn't kill the person on the side. I think it's a woman who's having a cigarette and coffee. He doesn't kill the person in the truck who's waiting for a client coming out of the Hilton, clearly. He's just on target to kill this person. So that to me sounds, you know, it's pretty cold. Pretty cold.
Oh, it's icy. Yeah, it's
not
icy
cold. But cold.
Yeah, I still don't know, though. I mean, it could be a guy motivated because of his own issues. Could be somebody just doing it for the money. But we will learn about it.
Right.
And obviously,
we'll learn about it, and we're going to be on it because I
walked past it today.
I walked past it today, and it's like life as usual, except at the actual spot where the victim died, right, which is right past the little awning at the Hilton Hotel there. There's like 4 TV cameras set up in a row. Waiting for a shot. So I guess they're waiting. If he's caught, somebody's going to run from the news bureau, stand right there and say, at this spot, you know, he was executed. They haven't moved. They're just there. So,
and I've seen a number of reports.
I didn't take a picture of it because it was like,
yeah, it's the scene, and so they have it still behind them, you know, just to give some sort of relevance to the report that they could have done anywhere else. So I get it.
Well, this was not just behind. They're right there. They're right there at the spot where was killed. There must have been so bloodstained. They're right there. I mean, there's some that are around, scattered around because the scene's not closed off anymore. But they're right, like on top of it. It's like I'm on top of this computer. Okay, this is the dead body where it was.
You think they would clean it up? They would clean up whatever's there, right? Wouldn't they clean up what's there?
Well, they probably did, but maybe, you know exactly where. I mean, it's not like you can't tell. It's so easy to tell. I mean, it's I went and got a cup of coffee. I came back from my client. I went and got a cup of coffee. Actually, it was a dirty matcha. Walked through the Ziegfeld Alley, which is how I usually get to my office from my meeting. And it's right. I mean, it's not like it's not there. And the Ziegfeld, by the way, the theater was setting up for some, obviously, either some lunch or some dinner because they were putting awnings up and they had cement blocks so the cars couldn't come.
Yikes.
So life as usual. It's New York City.
Yeah, they're not advertising that that's where they are, but they're not making a big deal out of it. Life goes on. Hey, a couple of flashback questions here. I see Madeira Beach is wondering about the judge dismissing that charge. Remember, it never made it to verdict. They were hung on that charge. And so that was his prerogative, was to just remove it from their plate. So now they can look at number 2, which they'll begin to do, probably continue to do, because they've been looking at it, I know, but they'll continue to do it on Monday.
And speaking about flashbacks, we're going to have a show on Monday, but we also have a show on Tuesday where we're going to discuss, we didn't discuss YSL wrap up this week, and because Doug Weinstein, our friend, is going to be back with us on Tuesday for the YSL wrap up. But if you go to last night's show, we had, it was a fine show. We had Max Short and Mr. Kokomo on. So take a look at that. About 7,000 of you have already looked at it. Take a look at it if you want to see a little different way of an interview. As someone mentioned, by the way, that they find our interviews interesting because we come at from a lawyer's perspective, not just like, tell us what you just told the other person. Yeah.
We would like to think. And we also, just when we were on the Law and Crime, same kind of thing. Our perspectives are maybe just a little different, and, hopefully it works. But it was fun. It was a fun interview. Max is a good guy. And so is Shaq. Shaq has had an education that is unbelievable in his short time, and now he's going off to law school. So, okay. That's it. What are you going to do this weekend? Anything good happening?
This weekend, well, I'm actually having a social dinner on Sunday night. Oh. I mean, I feel like I've been with you every single night, Michael Bryan. You're my second husband.
I know. I don't even know where
so I'm going to spend some time with my husband.
Well, good. You guys should do something. Yeah. I think I'm going to catch up on some work because I've been kind of playing hooky quite a bit. So I'm going to have to actually do some work.
That too.
All right, then.
I'm doing that Monday. I'm doing that Monday while you're at the court. I'll be working all day, and I'll see you Monday night.
Well, everybody have a great weekend. In the meantime, I'm Michael Bryan.
Everybody.
And, try to do the right thing.
And I'm Linda Kenny Bodden, and we are Justice Served TV. And if you like us, please subscribe, like, share, and you'll get notified when we have our next show.